One of my objectives in this Parliament has been to promote a social Europe. I suppose those words, social Europe, trip easily off the tongue, and the real question is, how can we do this? How can we make it a reality? And like many other things in politics and in life, it's step by step. And one of the areas where I have worked consistently is to try to ensure that we have social benchmarks at the same level as economic benchmarks when it comes to European policy. Every year we have something called the European semester, where member states submit their details of their budgets and their plans to the European Commission, and the European Commission will assess those. This is for all member states. However, up to now, they have largely assessed them only under economic headings, like, for example, debt or deficit or exports or growth. But they have not paid attention to things like maybe access to education, access to healthcare, programs for children with special needs, etc. And what we want is that the European Commission would assess the budgets of member states under both headings on an equal footing. And that's what I mean when I talk about social benchmarks having the same level of authority, if you like, or importance as economic benchmarks. And while that's not headline stuff and you won't read about it in the newspapers, if we could manage that, to have that in European policy, then I believe we would be well on the road to social Europe. Another area where I've done some work is the area of minimum income, because minimum income now is different to minimum wages. A minimum income is for people who have no income. They don't have any kind of unemployment benefit or other kind of maybe a disability benefit, etc., and they cannot find a job. Perhaps people maybe who are self-employed in Ireland would be a good example of those who have no access to an income, a minimum income from the state. This would be different in different member states and would be assessed depending on the circumstances in each member state. But if we had the baseline, if you like, or the safety net of a minimum income across the EU, then I believe, again, we would be moving very much in the direction of a social Europe. And another area that's very important is the area of decent and sustainable pensions. And while I suppose the issue of pensions is largely a matter for member states, nonetheless, through cooperation at European level and through learning from best practice in other member states and how they manage to bring this about, I believe we can, at European level, move in the direction of decent and sustainable pensions. And indeed, recently, I was very closely involved in a piece of legislation that would allow workers moving from one member state to another to ensure they brought their pension rights with them. And given that more and more people are moving from country to country in search of work, etc., it is very important that that piece of legislation is in place. As well as that, I have been very vocal on trying to ensure that the European Social Fund is 25% of all cohesion funding, because the social fund is directed towards social inclusion. And while we didn't get our 25%, we got just under 24%, which is higher than it has been before. And again, that is a step in the direction of social Europe. My own work, of course, on the Globalisation Fund to help redundant workers who've lost their jobs to access training, upskilling, etc., is another example of how Europe can provide a safety net for people and, again, move towards social Europe. I suppose aside from that, my work in a number of committees in the Parliament, and particularly in a number of intergroups and interest groups, indicates the value that I place on social Europe and on health issues in particular. I am Vice President of the Disability Intergroup in the Parliament. I am Chair of the Carers Interest Group in the Parliament. And I am also Vice Chair of the Mental Health Interest Group in the Parliament, of the Complementary and Alternative Medicine Interest Group in the Parliament, of the Epilepsy Group in the Parliament, of the Kidney Interest Group in the Parliament, of the MEPs Against Cancer Group in the Parliament, and of the Cervical Cancer Group in the Parliament, and also of the Kidney Health Group. So you can see from that I have a huge interest in all health areas and promoting a healthy and active Europe. As well as that, of course, I am pushing the Irish government to ensure that the cross-border healthcare directive is enacted immediately. It should have been enacted last October, and this allows Irish citizens who need to access healthcare, whether it might be a minor surgery or whatever, if that is not available in Ireland within a reasonable length of time, then you, as an Irish citizen and as a European citizen, have a right to travel cross-border, whether that might be to Belfast or London or Berlin or wherever, to access that healthcare and have your own local health authority pay for it. The only major stipulation on this is that the healthcare costs wherever you travel to Belfast or London cannot be greater than the healthcare costs in your own member state. So what that does is it ensures access to healthcare for all European citizens. Ireland has not yet brought that legislation into being. It should have been in place last October. The European Commission are already saying to member states, if you don't get your house in order and bring forward this legislation, we are looking at bringing you to court. That is a right for all citizens, and Irish citizens should not be deprived of that right. Also, just finally, to mention a number of other groups that I am involved with in the Parliament. Again, all of them in the social area. I'm involved in the interest group on the societal impact of pain, which may seem strange to a lot of you, but given that 1 in every 10 Europeans suffers from some form of ongoing chronic pain, that is a major issue. And we need to look at ways and means of alleviating that pain, finding solutions for patients, and our group in the Parliament is concentrating its effort on that. I am also involved in the working group on human dignity in the Parliament, and I'm also a member of the LGBT interest group in the Parliament.